Welcome back. I want to talk about and get into um, why sometimes, because you hear a lot about setting boundaries and whatnot, but why sometimes they're ineffective and don't work against certain types of narcissists. Before we discuss why setting boundaries may not work, we have to understand at least the mindset of a narcissist, right? The narcissistic personality disorder in itself has one of the key things that kind of makes a narcissist overlook your boundaries, and that's the lack of empathy, right? So, healthy individuals respect boundaries because they understand others' emotions and perspectives. Narcissists, however, lack the ability to genuinely empathize, making them indifferent or dismissive to your potential boundaries, right? That sense of entitlement. You put a boundary up, well, they don't care about that because they still feel that they're entitled either to you or to what you have. Many narcissists, at least, believe that the rules don't apply to them. Even if you set a boundary, it's not applying to me, right? That's how they're looking at it. When you set boundaries, they see it as an unfair restriction rather than a reasonable request. And that's important to think about. It's an unfair restriction. And heck, this can even go for outside of narcissistic people. Human nature in general, a lot of people don't like restrictions. They want to do what they want to do. They want to do what's comfortable for them. They want to be able to say whatever they want to say and there not be any consequences. They want to commit actions and do what they want to do and there not be any consequences if that's what they feel like doing, right? One thing you can see on a daily basis, right? Many of you can attest to this. If you drive, which I assume most of you do drive, how many of you actually, to the letter, follow the speed limit and drive the speed limit? Now, it does say you go with the flow of traffic, but even when it's not much traffic, you're going to drive for what's comfortable for you in most cases. Most cases, people do not follow the speed limit. It says 45. They are not right at 45 the whole time, right? So you have to understand human nature in general has a propensity to step outside of the rules. But especially with narcissists, they take it further. It becomes like a challenge when you set up a boundary, a challenge to get you to bend or break on. And the reason why boundaries fail with a narcissist, even with clear and firm boundaries, narcissists often find ways to undermine them, right? They're going to start boundary testing you. Narcissists are still going to push that limit to see how much they can get away with. If you check them, this is for people who still have to deal with narcissistic type people, maybe at work, you have friends, you have family, those sort of things, co-parenting, what have you. They may flat out ignore or challenge or gradually erode your boundaries until they regain control. They'll use manipulation like love bombing, trying to be sweet, trying to offer help, trying to offer assistance or service in some sort of way, flattery, gifts, to lure you into dropping your guard again. All right. Another big one is guilt tripping. A lot of them get you to drop your guard because they start guilt tripping you. start making it seem like you're too harsh on them or you're doing too much, right? They may act hurt or claim that they're hurt or being mistreated when you enforce these boundaries. And this is just to get you to second guess, to be unsure about what you're actually doing, right, in regards to them. And this manipulation, this tactic is intended to force you to feel responsible for their emotions, leading you to relax on your position or your stance. A lot of them will go into rage, right? You'll see that narcissistic rage where some narcissists react with anger, silent treatment when faced with boundaries, right? It's an intimidation tactic to pressure you into compliance. You may be around a lot of people who try to insult you, or they'll try to make fun of you for setting boundaries and so forth, right? These are all toxic behaviors, which, again, they don't necessarily have to specifically be narcissistic based for someone being a narcissist, but nonetheless, it's all manipulation or a part of wanting to control someone else, right? And just if you're dealing with, let's just say you just have a controlling person. There's a lot of people who may not be narcissists, but they're controlling. They like to have things their way. They will use these same manipulative tactics. So I want you to open your mind with this. It doesn't necessarily have to be a narcissist per se, right? When it comes to your boundaries not working, it's people who feel the need to sometimes police other people, tell other people what they should and shouldn't be doing. And then the manipulation, especially with narcissists, they know how to make things seem like they're looking out for your best interests when they do these things, or that it's only because they're trying to help. That's also manipulation, because it's reserved to serve the agenda of them having control over what you do. Right? They'll use triangulation, smear campaigns, especially if direct manipulation fails. A narcissist may involve others to guilt or pressure you into submission. They may paint you as unreasonable to mutual friends, family members, etc. This is all part of the whole scheme of things with them. And what leads to these dynamics, right? The difficulty in setting boundaries with a narcissist, especially, is often rooted in past patterns of behavior, either attachment issues, you have power struggles, those type of things. Early conditioning, right? If the narcissist is a long-term partner, family member, a friend, they may have conditioned you over a period of time to accept boundary violations as normal. Breaking these patterns is going to require some reprogramming and the ability of being able to identify them. Again, even if they weren't a narcissist, you have to be, it's not rude, but you have to be either dismissive of people who are like that, or you have to really put your foot down and confront them to the point where they know that that's not what you're going to stand for, right? Again, A lot of these types of individuals will try you. The narcissistic supply issue is another one. Narcissists, we know that they thrive on supply. Boundary limiting and standing on your boundaries hard limits their ability to extract that from you, making them more your boundaries. It's going to make it, it's going to cause them to pretty much want to go where it's easier at, right? Some of you have that codependency and enabling type of trait that opens the doors up to where your boundaries aren't very effective. And if you have a history of people pleasing or difficulty in with confrontation, right? Some people are absolutely afraid of confrontation. If you have an issue with that, they're going to exploit that because they're going to see it. They're going to sense it. The persistent often outlast at least your resistance unless you are fully committed to maintaining those boundaries, especially if you're codependent or you're used to people pleasing. The narcissist will win out every time. It's just a matter of time, and they know it. They can see when you're cracking. They can see when you've let just any small bit inkling of your will to resist them. They can see when it's becoming faulty or ineffective or it's weakening. So being clear and consistent is going to be the biggest thing. You know, your ambiguity is going to give them room to manipulate you. You have to be firm. You can't be afraid of confrontation. Remember, narcissists prey on not just the weak, but people, or they like to go after different things. That's a challenge, of course, like I said. But they're calculating when they do what they do. They're going to make sure that they have a certain position, a certain support or behind them or whatnot when they do attack. You have to be aware of this. So watch the surroundings and the individuals that they're dealing with as well. Detach yourself from their reactions. You have to expect pushback. You have to expect guilt trips. You have to expect the narcissistic rage. But don't engage emotionally. Their response is not your responsibility at all. All right? Important thing, as I've said earlier, a lot of people, this is something that I really want y'all to understand this, right? Just take the time to hear this. Human nature. A lot of people do what they do towards other people and so forth that may be harmful, disrespectful, whatever. Especially if they're used to doing it, especially if they're a narcissist, especially. They do it when there's no direct threat to their safety, or it's not going to bring imminent harm or danger or consequence to them. That's the whole formality of a bully in a sense. They're going to do things calculated to where the risk right? Mitigating where how their risk is what could fall back on them to harm, hurt, get them into. They're going to calculate that. Most of these individuals are only doing what they do because they've calculated that there's minimal risk. There's not a lot that they have to lose, right? If there was instant consequence, right, in which they would not like per every action that they commit to harm or disrespect or do whatever to an individual, you'd see a hell of a lot less incidents in these type of situations with narcissists or just people who are like that in general. So use consequences that have a definite cutoff or that has some type of repercussions to them. Now with narcissists, they're going to be calculating enough to ensure that they don't get themselves into a situation where there are a lot of consequences. That's why with them, you have to understand the nature of them being cowardly, even though they can appear like they're not. They're not going to put themselves in a situation where direct consequence can come to them where they can actually face that, right? Now, when you do decide to block and cut them off, that direct consequence, if you're in position to fully cut them off, has to remain. It can't fluctuate. Because at that point, you're telling them your consequences are limited and they're not consistent. So violating your boundaries isn't really a big deal to them. You'll be mad for a little bit. You'll stop speaking to them, and then a month or so goes by, and then the smoke starts to clear, and then you're back engaging with them. Again, folks, this doesn't have to necessarily be specifically towards narcissists, especially if you know that you're a really forgiving person. You have to understand your forgiving nature puts you at risk for people not respecting you. Don't explain and do not justify, right? Don't justify why you're doing it, cutting them off, dismissing them. The more you explain, the more they can argue and twist your words, and that's not the position you want to be in. A simple no or that don't work with me, that's not going to fly with me. Why? Because I said, and I'm not going to go in and explain it to you and leave it at that. Right? Because they want to get you to engage. The more you engage to them, the less confident and secure you are in whatever you're saying. You don't really mean it. If you mean it, stand on it and move on. Know when to walk away. You got to. In some cases, the only way to enforce boundaries is to limit your contact or no contact, no talking, no interaction whatsoever. Because with a lot of people, that's the only way they're going to respect you and what you're talking about. Anyway. Hope this helps for those who are struggling with the boundaries not being kept. You have to understand How are you moving after you set these boundaries with individuals? All right. Anyway, we'll talk next time. Have a good one.